Welcome into the show, everybody who's listening and joining in with us today. Another episode of Sit Around the Fire, and I'm here with a very special guest, literally joining us from across the world. So we finally made our time zones work out together to where we could figure out a time to meet. So I'm really excited to be bringing you guys this conversation today, and we're going to dive into a lot of really powerful topics around relationships and what this looks like. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Miss Pauline.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. I'm glad we got it sorted.
Absolutely, yeah. So my kick off the episode question is always to the person listening today, what would you like them to walk away with after our conversation?
Definitely some education and maybe some ahas, like, oh my gosh, recognizing some aspects and things that we talk about. Yeah, education for sure. My whole purpose is around educating people to do their best, live their best lives in the bedroom. And not just the bedroom, but everywhere, like to live their best, be their best selves. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how it all kind of impacts every area of our life. So it's all incredibly relevant. So very cool. Well, give us an idea or let the people know, because you have a pretty unique story when I was looking into all of your stuff and how you came to land in the work that you're doing now. But walk us through a little bit of your story and what you are doing in this season of life.
Okay, so I think I started doing my NLP training, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and that's working with the subconscious to bring about change on the conscious mind. And I don't know, we're just mucking around doing presentations, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to talk about sex. No idea why, but I just said I was going to do that. So we started pitching and mucking around with that. And then fast forward a few more workshops, and I think I must have come to the end of my trainings and trying to work out what area that I was going to make my niche. And I knew I didn't want to be a business coach. It wasn't for me. And they were always saying, create your niche around what you love best, what you're passionate about. Excuse me if my throat goes in and out. I've been having a bit of a thing. So I was with my girlfriend going through this process, and I'd be going, health, emotional well-being, blah, blah, all these different things. And every time I opened my mouth, she literally slammed her fist in her hand and yelled at me, boring, like barked at me. So I was like, oh. So I felt like energetically my back was against the wall. And the next thing, out of my mouth, with no filters, came sex. And I'm like, where'd that come from? And she just goes, that's it. You know more about sex than anybody. I know. What a great niche. There's so many people that need that. And I was like, oh, crap, I'm not sure about this, in my perturbation around it. Anyway, at the end of the day, I decided, well, as we say in Australia, we'll give it a crack, as in we'll give it a go. So like, I'll give it a go. I'll apply my NLP module, look at your problem, look at what you want your outcome to be, and then get back to the problem and look below the surface to see all the underlying core issues that are contributing to it. And that's how I still really work today. And sometimes I know straight away what we need to do, but we need to pull apart the history of what's going on to really get the best out of that person. So that's how I started. Pretty funny.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. Was one of the things I was so excited when we got our initial connection, is that I saw you were a master NLP practitioner, and I use NLP in my practice too. And so I was like, how cool. Now we can talk on a level too to help people understand what this whole thing is about, digging under the surface and what actually is causing your problem and the symptoms to show up. And what an incredible niche. And I agree with your friend, so absolutely needed. Like, very people don't like talking about this kind of stuff.
No, it can be challenging for some people. But I think by the time people get to me, they're sort of at that point of exasperation. We're stuck. We can't continue. What do we need to do? So I think it gets to that point. I certainly see people that sit on the fence for many years about particular issues, and then they finally come in. And I'm like, well, you've wasted five, not, well, they have wasted 5 years, but they've got to be ready to do the work.
Mhm.
So that's the
Yeah.
wall. And it's like with me, it's mind and body. So it's working around the mindset, the emotions, the belief systems that we form about ourselves. Excuse me. Um, as well as teaching and working with the sexual energy and getting things moving. So it's a combination of things. Definitely, it's not one or the other. It's both.
Yes. So with the aspect of diving into people's belief systems and kind of what's driving their life, how they're living their life, and bringing this connection with the relationships and with intimacy, I'm wondering if you can speak to the person that, like, let's say they're struggling with self esteem, they're struggling with self worth, and how, in your experience or your ideas, like, how does this start to impact people on a relational and even like an intimacy type level?
Oh, it can impact them massively. And that's probably when I first start doing belief system work, that's usually the first spot I go to. Where's your self worth at? Where's your self love? Where's your value at? And so I pull that apart. And we usually get something in that. And then we flip the script and create an empowering statement. So that's a start to the road out of that sort of belief system. Belief systems have a huge hold on us, phenomenal. But when we do the NLP processes, as you know, it flips it pretty quickly. So that's very common. There's a lot of self worth and low value and all of that sort of thing, self love with, I'd say, the majority of people. There's always a few exceptions to the rule, but I'll still find a limiting belief there at some point. It might be to do with their age, or like I had a guy the other day and he's like, oh, well, I'm 62, I suppose it's, starting to, and I'm like, that's terrible belief. And I mean, in their 80s, it can still have, heart erections. So it's just a belief. So we have to start looking at changing that.
And that, yeah, whenever you tell your, I mean, that if that thought's going through your mind, like, what do you think your body is going to respond back with? Is like, okay, yeah, I guess we can't do it,
Yeah.
or so it's never surprising. It's like whatever you're telling yourself is going to be what you experience.
Yeah.
Um, it was
100%.
it's interesting because I this comes up a lot in my work as well too. Either if I'm working with a couple or if I'm working on the individual level with someone. But I'm wondering what you can speak to, like, let's say through different seasons of life. And particularly, I see this a lot with folks like post kids, like kids are getting older, kids are leaving the house, or everybody, everything's kind of starting to shift and
Yeah.
change. And how, like, this really has a profound impact on relationship and connection. So, can you give us some tidbits, some wisdom around, like, what have you seen and how do you help people navigate through, like, the different seasons of life while still staying connected?
Well, it's usually they're not connected, which is why they're struggling. So it always comes back to getting them reconnected with it. I work with a principle of connection to self. When you're connected to self and you can be out of your head and your body, then you'll have a better capacity to connect with your partner and be more present with your partner. So I just strip it back to those sorts of things, activities and exercises they can do. Look at their patterns. Are they having sex? Are they not having sex? What's happening there? Why? All the things that go in with that. And, it's about realigning the values and the priorities because, when you are new parents, everything is the kids. But we need at some point to switch that, flick that back to hang on, we've done the kid business. Now I'm with you hopefully for the next 20 or 30 years. What do we need to do? Otherwise we're not going to make it.
Yeah, and I'd see this a lot too with people. They don't even know who their partner is in this season of life that they're in now. It's like
Yeah.
they're expecting it to be who it was when they first got together or before kids or right after having kids, but here they are 20, 25, 30 years later and they like don't even know the person that they're sitting next to, and this whole roommate syndrome that I hear a lot comes up as we're just really good roommates. But how do you help people through that season? Like through they've been together for a long time. They're doing the roommate thing. Like how do you work with people in that stage?
Well, I look at who it is affecting, who's not wanting the sex. So usually I just would work with that person. So it could be, let's say, for example, a woman's got no libido. And that's pretty common. We lose our libido as we go through perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause because we're losing all the hormones. The beauty about the work I do, I don't need to know about what's happening with your hormones. I can get things back on track because I work with sexual energy and the mindset as well. Excuse me. So I would work with the woman, getting her connected into herself and doing all the activities and exercises to get things moving. And I'd also look at the husband, like how's that affecting the husband because, or, the partner, because maybe they haven't had sex for ages, then maybe he's having problems. Maybe he can't get erections and things. So it just depends on individually what's going on. But I work with either, or I'll work with them both separately, and then I'll bring them together for, different exercises and connecting exercises, but basic tantric stuff to create that connection again, which is
Yeah. Okay.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, building how do you I'm curious for I mean, I'm just taking a wild like assumption here, but I'm guessing that from what I know of and what we kind of spoke to before we recorded is this can be a difficult topic for people to talk about or to understand or to want to address. So
Yeah.
what would you suggest for that person who maybe is listening today that's like already starting to feel uncomfortable, maybe like already like, I don't know if I want to talk about this, or like kind of, and a lot of it comes from old culture, old programming too, of what we've been taught
Mm,
about sex and intimacy.
yeah.
But what do you say to those people that like this is gonna be very incredibly new for them, to even have these conversations, or maybe they've never even had conversations like this with their partner? Like, how do you start people off without it feeling like very overwhelming or
Yeah.
like that side?
Yeah. I call it the elephant when you've got the elephant in the room that's not talked about. And I've got a great slide when I do live presentations. It's the elephant in the bed between them. It's quite funny. And that's the truth. So, sometimes I might have a consult with a man who goes, I don't know what to do. My wife doesn't want sex. I don't know how to approach it. She's really like standoffish about it all. And I think you've just got to frame it in the right space. It's like, well, first off, are you actually having any intimacy at all? Or is it just tap, tap on the shoulder at night, hey, I want to have sex? Well, then you're going to get a no if that's all you're doing. As they say, intimacy starts at the beginning of the day. Did you make the cup of tea? What are you doing around the house? Like, what are you doing to contribute to your wife's or partner's role or life? We all have to be a contribution. We have to be, by being with someone, they need to be adding 10% to our life. So if that person's in our life, what are they bringing to the table in terms of contribution? So to the man, what are you doing to contribute to her other than maybe handling the money and paying the bills if it's sort of an older sort of couple? You have to be more involved and engaged. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is about, well, you need to have an open, honest conversation, but not go into blame and not expect an answer. So pick your timing. Okay, maybe having dinner and you're sitting at the table together and you're talking. That would be a good time to say, I need to share this with you and I feel really uncomfortable. However, I need to do this and share. I love you. You're the world to me. And I'm really sad that our sex life has completely vanished. I'm not sure what we can do to turn that around because I can't imagine living another 10 or 20 years with you with no sex, fundamental part of our marriage. So bring it all back to I statements. You're not having sex with me and, you're going to that because then the wall's going to come up and vice versa. If it's a woman talking to the man, you got to just share your feelings of how it's affecting you, and that's the end of the conversation. They don't have to come in and save it, and then you can just sort of go, well, maybe I'm not expecting an answer right now, but I would really hope that you would take on board what I've said, and maybe we can have a conversation down the track. Baby steps sometimes. So, yeah,
it automatically diffuses any defensiveness, I
yeah,
think, and it
100%.
takes the charge out of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the idea because, well, you think about any argument that you have with your partner, if you can retrace that argument, you'll be going, "You didn't put the bin out, you didn't do this, you didn't do that." And so they're just gonna Waller, as opposed to, "I do a lot, I'm working, I'd really be grateful if you could assist me. I can't do it all." There's ways about going around how to communicate. It comes down to communication, really.
Well, hands down, it has to be
Yeah,
communication.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We will it's funny how sometimes we just expect things to get better, but never want to communicate about what's actually going on.
Can't you read my mind? No, sorry, can't read your mind. Yeah, you have to communicate. You have to share your vulnerability. You have to share your emotions. It's part of a relationship. Otherwise, you're just doing all the surface stuff. You're not getting into that deeper layer. And the deeper layers that you can go to with your partner is the stuff that's going to sustain a relation way, way better than the surface level stuff.
Mhm.
Hi, how are you? How was your day? I've made spaghetti bolognese tonight. You know what I mean? Like you need to have those deeper conversations.
Yeah, and that's what people fall into that rut. I mean, they get into that rut where that is all they're talking about. What do you suggest? Like, how do you start to like spice it up in that realm of things, or how do you start to encourage people to have some different kinds of conversations rather than just, hey, this is how my day was, this the same kind of conversation over and over?
Well, look, I believe some people don't have the capacity to go deeper. Sorry, but I do believe that. Um, but if you really want to try, I think you got to go back to remembering how things were when you first met. How, what did they do that made you heart flutter, or all the little things that you're excited about? Write it all down, journal it, and then go, okay, that's missing, that's missing, that's missing. What do I need to do to bring these things back? What do we need to do to bring these things back? And then that's a good start point. 'Cause if you remember what it was about that person, why you fell in love with them, what were they doing that made you fall in love with them? It was how they acted, how they behaved, and how they treated you. So is that really different to how they're acting and behaving and treating you now? Do they still have that same respect and honoring of you? Or is it just gone? Because we can blame life getting in the way, but the reality is, those things, if they were there at the beginning, should still be there.
I totally agree with you. I think that's kind of what I'm connecting it back to what I mentioned earlier about getting to know who this person is in this season.
Yeah.
And also, like, knowing yeah, like, dating, we forget to date, like, we forget to, like, do those kind of
Yeah. And
things
they're
with our
important.
partner.
And they're all important because that's all the things that are creating the intimacy and creating the connection. And when you've got little ones, we have a birth plan, but we don't have an afterbirth plan. And I remember working on that with somebody about an afterbirth plan. So that, yeah, okay, you might not want sex for a while, but to create the intimacy and some sexual intimacy there, because that gets completely just pushed aside.
Yeah, you're right, I've seen that play out in many different scenarios and avenues where it's just you're right, it just kind of shuts down and people, like, normalize that's the thing, like, "Oh, we just had kids," and, like it's just normal for everything now to be like completely shifted from what it was, or which I do agree with you, I think we're missing the mark, or
Yes, 100%.
it's not setting you up well.
No, definitely not.
So I'm curious to hear your take on the work that you do in relationship to people who go through a lot of exposure to stress and trauma. My audience is a lot of first responders, military members, and their spouses. So we're speaking to a crowd who, of course, is perpetually immersed in the world of stress and trauma, but also, I mean, on some level, a lot of that comes home as well too. And so spouses are experiencing the secondary exposure to stress and trauma. But in your side of things and from your perspective with the work you do, is how do you see stress and trauma impacting relationships and impacting intimacy?
Oh, massively. Um, I had an emergency doctor that I worked with here in Queensland who was conscious, always had massive anxiety, high anxiety levels. And as I unpacked things, she had a really good childhood. There was no trauma in her childhood. It was all the healthy family relationships. And I said, well, because I will always go back to the beginning because I do trauma work. I said, what gives you the most anxiety right now? And she said, when I leave work and go home to my partner, because I don't know how my partner is going to be when I get home because they had, different things going on for them, like ADHD, and I can't remember all the things, but they had a few things going on. So that created the most anxiety. So I said, all right, well, we'll work on that. So I do a process called havening, which is from America, actually. And I know that all first responders would have, I'm sure, counselling, but they probably don't do it regularly. And I think counseling's great because you talk it through. But what I love about my work is that it's really simple, it's really basic, and it actually unlocks the amygdala. So this is a process called havening where you rub the hands together like that. That automatically starts to calm your nervous system down, floods it with oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. So in the process, when I'm working with someone doing havening, I get them to do this. There's a couple of other different movements, but this is one of them. And I ask them a lot. I pull out good things that they love about life, and then basically when we do a round, eyes are closed, so they're working the whole time doing this. I'll ask them questions, and I'm doing things to trip their brain up. Like I might get them to talk about their passion. Maybe it's going for walks on the beach, but then I might throw in a really stupid question, like which is making their brain think. And then at the end of the round, I get them to score at the beginning. Sorry, I get them to score the trauma. So 10 out of 10 would be horrific. After the first round, I go, "What would you score that now?" Looking back on it, and I'll go 7. We get that down to a 0. We get it to a 0 to a 2, but I'm competitive, so I try and get it to 0. And I always say I'll go 10 minutes over if we're like close. And I've probably only ever stopped somebody at a 4 because I could just see that it wasn't shifting. They were hanging on to stuff, and I'll get a bit like pushy in there as well. But then I back that. But then I've got all the emotional stuff that I work with the NLP. So we've got the anger, we've got the grief, we've got sadness, fear, and guilt. So all of that, working with those things can potentially iron out any little niggles that might be still left. But normally I get them down to a 0. So what that actually does, apart from flooding your system, your nervous system with all the good feels, it actually unlocks the amygdala. So it actually unlocks the flight, fight, freeze part of the brain. And I think that's key. Both, I think talking's also good, but this is actual change work, and I'm into change work. But then it can impact their relationship. And like with this particular person, they weren't having sex. Neither of them had libido. And they were very, very disconnected from each other. So it's just the usual work of getting them connected to themselves and each other, and teaching about the sexual energy and getting that sort of thing moving. So yeah, does that help answer your question?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, and I mean, so many good things to take away there, and a lot of what I speak to a lot too is the nervous system work because, um, I I don't know. I mean, for me, I was never really taught about the nervous system until I got into this work later in life. So, like, everything was just like, oh, cool. Like it's just normal to feel dysregulated all the time. So now that I try to empower other people to try.
Well, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I hear, like, your part of it, what you're speaking to is this whole element of if we're in the Amagata, like, I call it the lizard part of our brain, the lizard with the panic button back there, but if it's just makes so much sense when you can put the keys together is if you're not feeling safe and secure in your nervous system, in your
Right.
body, then, like, it is going to be so hard, if not impossible, to feel connected with your partner and especially be intimate with your partner either.
Yeah.
Like, it really is not going to happen, or it's gonna be really, really unpleasant if it does.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. And I mean, actually, I worked with a paramedic there for a while as well, a guy. I can't remember off the top of my head if he had some other trauma other than the daily trauma. And I said, this is paramount. Every day when you get in that ambulance, you start havening every day, non negotiable. Finish that run, do it again. This is a constant daily thing to be doing just to get your nervous system a bit calmer. Now, other things they can do is qigong. When I do qigong, I'm like, like I can feel how that affects me and calms my whole system down, and you feel good as well. So there are lots of different things, but it's really important if you're in that environment that you're actively doing something regularly through the day.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up, like, the energy side of things too, and I like to, again, approach this so people understand it and it doesn't just feel like maybe what the idea of it was that they had before, that it feels very woo or like they can't understand it. But I always try to explain, like, our bodies literally operate off of energy. Like every system in your body functions off of energy. So if you can
Sex is
understand and
energy.
resonate.
Sex is energy. This is our life.
Yeah.
Sex is our life force. And the
Yeah.
thing with sex, if we're not having sex, it's like, well, what's happening to your life force? It's getting squished down, and then all the health issues come out and all the emotional things come out. So we can start working with that sexual energy and being in touch with our most intimate selves. There's lots of growth and lots of potential that can happen.
Yeah. So when people are doing work with you or getting ready to do work with you, you mentioned kind of taking one person at a time and then doing some work together. But do you often usually recommend people are doing their own work independently as well as working together?
As a couple,
Yeah, like doing individual work and then doing work together as a couple.
so yeah, look, it is beneficial. I like to work with the person that's got the main problems, and if the other partner it's not really affecting them other than they're not having sex, but there's no other physical impact on them, then I would definitely, once I've got a few sessions under the way with the primary person, I'll bring them in for some connection, sort of tantric connection stuff, and bring them back into their hearts and connecting from heart space instead of connecting from here. So yeah, I will always do that. Definitely. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is like how powerful it is for us to work on our individual stuff as well as working on our relationship things. Like, you can't just focus on the relationship only, usually. You gotta look
Yeah.
at things from all different angles.
Yeah. And I do get a lot of people in relationships that come to see me that haven't told their partner as well. And it's a choice point. Sometimes it's like they're working on it for themselves. Maybe there's been trauma, maybe there's been sexual abuse, and they know that that's sitting there or it's come up again. And it's like, okay, I've got to do something about it, because they suddenly realize that this abuse is impacting their actual sexual life. So then they might come and see me on their own. There's lots of different reasons. And I often, when I have a person in a relationship contact me, always ask them, well, when you come for the consult, Are you coming on your own, or do you want to bring your partner? Because your partner's welcome. It's your choice what you want to do there, and then that they make the decision themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're in a lot of your stuff and on your website, you speak about this concept around like conscious relating. And like I'm wondering if you can expound on that. Tell us a little bit more about what does that mean and what does it look like in our relationships?
Okay. So conscious relationships is really about being present with each other all the time. We get so caught up in technology and on our phones, and it's about putting things aside and going, oh, my partner's here. I don't need to look at Facebook, or I don't need to look at Instagram or scroll. I love the term doom scrolling. Um, and I've got a human being in front of me. I can connect with them and have fun. So it's getting back to basics, really. And I teach certain exercises. So I'll give you one exercise that anyone that's listening with a partner can try. And this is called eye gazing. And eye gazing can be really terrifying for some people. Like, oh my God, I'm going to look at you in the eye. I'm like going, you're looking at your partner in the eye and you're freaking out, but you're going to have sex with them? Like, that does not make sense to me. So it's like when you're having sex, you're switching off the brain and you're just doing the sex. So this is true connecting. So when you look at your partner with your left eye and you look into their left eye, in Tantra, it's known as the windows to the soul. So you just sit facing each other on a chair, on the floor, whatever's comfortable for you. I'm not attached to any of that. And you sit for 5 minutes. That's a long time. So maybe you can start 2 or 3 minutes and build it to 5, but build it to 10. But if you do
Nice.
that every day, what it does is, I don't know, you're pretty young, and I don't know if you had it over there, but in America, but in Australia, we had this program growing up. There wasn't movies made, so you might know it, Get Smart, about
Yeah.
the silly spy. So
Yeah.
in Get Smart, when they were going to talk about the spies, they'd have this code of silence come down around them. And it's like, no, you can't do any spy talk until the code of silence is completely down. So what I call this is it creates a code of silence around the two of you, because you are there, you are connected, you're not looking over there, you are solidly looking at this person in front of you, left eye to left eye. And initially it can be right. If I get them to do it in my room, the big giggling and it's just that nervous energy. So if that happens, it's just close your eyes, hand on your belly, take 3 deep breaths into your belly to ground yourself, and then open your eyes and go again. Eventually you'll get there. But if you
Mhm.
do that every day, like, so you could do it after dinner maybe, or before dinner. I don't know. I had a couple that I had years ago, um, that were only having sex once a year, so it was a birthday sex. They'd been married for maybe 20 years, like first girlfriend, boyfriend, and married. And they had developed, and so it's about looking at your habits as well. So they had unconsciously developed really bad habits. They cooked their own meals independently because they had different things they were eating. And then they would sit down with their dinner in front of TV and eat their dinner. And then they'd go to bed. She'd get some pillows and put a big pillow behind her and one next to her, and get a book out and read. So that pillow next to her was more or less going to her husband, see you later, not interested.
Mm.
And he'd be like, oh, and he'd roll over. So, right, we're changing things. No dinner in front of the TV. You have to sit at the table. You can do your different meals, whatever there, but you sit at that kitchen table and you eat your dinner. Before you eat your dinner, you do the eye gazing. You're allowed to choose, I just said, 2 programs a week that you can watch, and find something new to read. Bed is for sleeping or sex. That habit, that was like our first session. And they came, whoever it was, I don't know which one. I think it was the guy came in like for his session like the next week or 2 weeks later. He said, we've had sex. And I'm like, yes, just changing that and knowing that they want to get things back on track was enough to
Yeah.
change the dynamic. So look at what your habits are and how it's impacting. I've had, when I was dating a guy years ago, we were doing the eye gazing. And it's sort of like if you're in the middle of something when they come, you can just give me a minute, because you want to be able to. Oh no, this is something else. Or I'm giving you 2 things now. giving you their undivided attention. So I was just in the middle of having to respond. I don't know, something was urgent. I said, just give me a minute. So he sat down on the couch and I finished. I went, okay, I'm ready to say hello now. So I call it the hello hug. So you
Mhm.
come together and you lock your bodies together, no gaps, full body lock, and you put your hands around the back, so at the back of the heart on their back. And when we hug, for some reason, we automatically lean to our left. So I want us to lean to our right, so our hearts are touching. So we're fully locked, hands in, leaning that way, and close your eyes and take 3 big, deep breaths together. That brings you into presence in yourself, presence with your partner. And if you do that at a regular basis, you start connecting from not from here, but from the heart space. And then you can actually notice the difference. It's a habit that you've got to build. So they're two hot tips.
Wow. Those are amazing tips. I hope that, like, everybody is really listening because those are, like,
Rewind,
man, golden
rewind.
ticket.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
those two things alone can really, on its own, just save relationships, and that's what I did with this couple. And they're still together. And it was funny because I used to see him out occasionally, but he never said anything to me. And I'm like, oh, maybe they've split up and he's not talking to me because he's cranky with me. And I ran into him somewhere, I don't know, another time. And I'm like, talk to him. And I said, so is everything good with you? And whatever the wife's name was. He goes, oh, yeah, she's over there somewhere. Oh, great. I'll go and say hello. And I told him that. He said, oh, I just didn't recognize you. I didn't see you. I was like, oh, I'm thinking, all this. So they were still together and they were having a great time and having great relationship. So that was kind of nice because I'm in a community where I go somewhere and I always see 2 or 3 or half a dozen people that I know.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah. So they're great. They're great. Um, Simple techniques.
Yeah, so simple, and what you brought up was so valuable because you're right. Spot on. We get into these unconscious behaviors all the time, and I've had a very similar scenario with many different couples, but one particularly that had very similar things that your couple did of, watching TV while eating and all this kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I wonder why they don't have any good connection. But when we kind of did a similar thing with breaking some of these behaviors, and you would have thought I would have asked for them to, like, just completely turn their whole world upside down. It was so funny to see their reaction of like, well, you're here, you wanted to do something, so
Yeah.
you need to be willing to make a change if you want this to actually work for you.
Yeah. And that's just remind me, I'm going to text this guy later. He came for a consult on a Saturday. I do them occasionally on a Saturday. But on the Friday, I had 7 missed calls from him. And I'm like going, really, mate? Like, if I don't answer, I'm busy and I'll see a missed call. And anyway, so 7 urgent calls, got to see me now. So things aren't working down there for him. And he split with his wife 8 months ago. And there's a few things connected to that. So as I dig down asking about alcohol, he goes, oh, I don't drink much these days. I used to drink a lot. He got diagnosed with leukemia 10 years ago. He's been able to dodge chemo, which is amazing.
Mhm.
And when he got diagnosed 10 years ago, he just hit the bottle. So I said, okay, so you're not drinking as much these days. What are you drinking? And he had a heart attack. He was having 2 beers and a bottle of wine every night.
Oh, yeah.
And I went, that's a lot. And you've got
Yeah.
erection issues. Age could be testosterone loss. I need you to drop alcohol. I want you to have, and he hasn't even signed on for coaching yet. I said, I want you to have one alcohol free day. It's one alcohol free day. And I want to negotiate with you what we'll drink. So he said Sunday was his alcohol free day and he was terrified about doing it. I said, you can do it. And as we're doing the whole consult, he realized that there was some major issues there. He knew I was right, but he just wasn't really willing to go full in. And he said, 2 beers and a glass of wine and Sunday alcohol-free day. And I went, okay. I said, I want 1 beer, 1 wine, glass of wine. because you're a hard bargain. I said, this is the start point to start weaning you off. We're going to get that less. So I'm going to text him later today. Go, how'd you go yesterday? See what he says. He's like, I'll ring you when I'm ready. I'm like, yeah. I said, I'll probably ring you before then. But that's okay. I'll be harassing you before that. So that's a lot of alcohol. And
Hmm.
you got to look at all the other things that go on. And so no wonder his marriage collapsed, because he was like paralytic every night of the week, very, very drunk. So, yeah, it's no wonder.
No, it all makes so much sense when you start to look at stuff, but you have to be willing to look at it and you have to take accountability and be responsible. And yeah, I really like your tactic. It sounds very similar to mine. So that's very awesome.
Cool.
And no wasting time. There's no point. Like
Yeah, that's it.
either
I mean, my whole goal with anyone I work with is I'm passionate about awakening everyone to their full sexual potential, because most people are not living it. Like, one woman might go, I had one orgasm. And I go, well, and so they stop. I'm like, well, why would you not keep going? Maybe you'll have another one. Maybe it took too long to get to that one. So it's like, well, no, you could probably have two or three if you get out of your head and your body and do all these things. Um, yeah, so it just makes a really big difference doing those sorts of things. And the other thing is about not just the sexual side of things, about being the best version of themselves. So that's sorting out all that baggage, why they're drinking and the alcohol and whatever else is going on. I remember one woman said that she came to me for sex therapy and walked away with a whole lot more, because we shifted all the other stuff out of her system that was in the way. So you are getting a lot more. You're getting an upgrade. That's what I look at it.
cool. Yes. Yeah, and I mean, I know we only have a few minutes left in our conversation, which we could talk about this for so long, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that because you are doing incredible work in what you are doing, but I
Thank
want
you.
if we can tell everybody like how they can get connected with you, they dive into your resources as well as your book that's out there too. So starting to get people to explore this topic more and be more curious and like
Yeah.
live an upgraded life as you talked about.
Yeah. 100%. Thank you. So I'm Pauline Ryeland, intimacy whisperer, but I'm sure you'll share all of that in the clip when you share it all. So
Yes.
I'm in Australia and Queensland. So we just have to get, if you want to work with me, we just have to get the time sorted. But Ashley and I have worked it out brilliantly. So that's good. And we don't have a time change in Queensland. The rest of the East Coast does, but we don't. Um, so I work with women predominantly around loss of libido, not being able to orgasm, women that have internal pain when they have sex, and no woman should have internal pain. And that's another reason why you can lose your libido. There's so many reasons why you can lose your libido. So I work with women and get rid of that internal pain, and I put my hand on my heart and go, that's a guarantee. I get rid of that. Obviously overseas, if they're here local, I'll do physical hands-on work, but I've worked out systems that for people that overseas or interstate, because I work with a lot of people around Australia, so that's not an issue. Um, and sexual trauma and abuse, all those sorts of things. And then with men, I work with, erection function, not being able to maintain or get an erection, premature ejaculation, all prostate type related things as well. Peyronie's, which is a weird condition where men can wake up and one day and their penis is a bit bent. And urologists just want to cut a little bit out and straighten it. Like, no. And so I work with breaking down the adhesions that are there and repair them that way. And I also work with nerve damage in the genital area as well. So, and loss of libido for men. So it's sort of pretty, and trauma, like it's all sort of crosses over. And my book is called Empowered Conscious Sexuality, From Prude to Pleasure. So it's my story of how I got to where I am, but it's also goes into all the different modalities that I use. So I'm NLP trained, which is the neuro-linguistic programming, havening. I'm Tantra trained, and I'm a somatic sexological body worker as well. So it goes into all those modalities in much more detail about what they are and how they contribute. And the book's also got lots of exercise and activities that you can do if you're single or on your own. I talk more about conscious relationships. I talk about consent and boundaries, which is really important. So there's quite a lot in there. And it's funny because many, many years ago, I had lots of girlfriends that were writing books. And I'm like, I'm not writing a book. I was very adamant. The book, yeah, too much work to me. And then I got this download, because I do get downloads sometimes, like writing a book. And I'm like, so I argue with what I call my higher self. I'm going, really? I've got to write a book? Oh my God. Okay, well, it has to be educational. I'm dictating all this stuff. Okay. So then I wrote the book. And it was a #1 bestseller in 5 categories on Amazon, which is pretty unusual, and held sacred sexuality space for like a month, which is super unusual. It usually gets
Yeah.
done within a couple of days. And I was very excited, and I was going to email her, but I didn't. You've got Barbara Carell is in the States, and I have done some training with her, and I was nuts. I was #1, she was #2. I knocked her down. I almost so tempted to go message her and go, hey, remember me? I've just knocked you down to #2. Thank you. I decided not to in the end, because it's been a while since I've done any work with her. I thought that was pretty cool as well. So yeah, Amazon has that. And yeah, like if there's anything here that sparked anyone, just find my website, which is just myname.com, and send an inquiry through. Easy. We'll have a chat. Have a 15-minute chat first up. We can do that on Zoom or Facebook, whatever, and then we can see about doing some sessions.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, to the people who are listening, like, you have this incredible resource to dive into with someone who knows what she's talking about, and she can help in so many different arenas. And I really just encourage people who are diving into our episode today to start having these conversations and start talking about this stuff, and not just settling for what you think it's always going to be like or it has been like. Is start expanding this and realizing that you can have an incredible intimate connection with your partner and live a really incredible life, but you have to start taking some steps to do that. So I really highly encourage people to check out all of your work and your book and everything. But I'm so really, really grateful and thankful that you took the time to come on the show, and people are going to walk away with so much to think about and so much to act on. So, and those 2 tips you gave, gold. So thank you so much for all of that.
You're so welcome. And on my website too, all my podcasts that I've done, because I've done a lot last year. I think last year I did a lot with people in the States. So all the podcasts go up on my website. And what I love about it is, even though we're talking about sex and intimacy, every podcast is different, because it depends on who's interviewing me about what their questions are and what they want to know. So it's not like, oh, I've got to listen to Pauline talking about sex again. Every episode is really quite vastly different, which I think is great. It's just the way it's worked out.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I'm excited to go check some of those out too and see what the other conversations have been like. And you're, of course, always welcome back on my show anytime. So
I'm sure there's more we can talk about. So yeah, we can do it again in another month if you like. I'm more than happy to do that.
Definitely, yes. Well, thank you to Pauline. Thank you to all of our listeners who joined in with us today. And as always, we invite you to check out our channel, to like and subscribe, and especially give us some comments back on this episode. Let us know how the hug went, how the eye gazing goes. Like, let us know how stuff is working for you. We appreciate your support so much. So everyone listening out there, go out and have an amazing day, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.